So welcome back to Beauty Marks. Today I have Maria Fernandez here with me talking about mental health, her story on how she's overcome childhood trauma, relationship. And so thank you so much, Maria, for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm good. A little busy these days, but under the circumstances, doing well.
So first of all, for those of you guys that don't know Maria, I want you, Maria, to present yourself and kind of introduce yourself a little bit about you.
My name is Maria Fernandez, and I am a licensed mental health counselor. I am also a lay pastor. I do family care. I do a lot of work with young women, with families, with couples. In my mental health practice, I work with a lot of history of trauma. I do premarital, also do couples counseling. And I also work with a lot of pastors and missionaries.
So what kind of brought you to your passion for people, to helping people? Like, is that part of your story?
It just kind of evolved. I've always been sort of the person that would end up staying after work and people would share things with me. And half the time I felt like I'm worse off than you are. I don't know why you're telling me this. But it was a process and a preparation of just being open to other people.
And how long have you been working in mental health?
Now, I want to say it's probably, about 10 years.
Wow.
Formally, because I went to school later. I went to school in my late 40s and got my master's degree. I'm a late bloomer. But before that, I had always been in and out of different environments, running groups, talking about doing stuff like divorce care, sort of helping people kind of get back on track.
So, I'm excited for you to share your story of, because you, for me, are someone that I really look up to because you're always so positive, always sharing about your faith and just like that pretty much anything that you have faced, like you can always overcome it. And so first, can we just start off with just sharing a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. Interestingly enough, most people that get into this field of counseling and just helping people with their soul wounds usually have a story themselves. I'm a really firm believer. I've sat on the other side. I've gone through my own process of counseling and working through things so that I could be a healthy, effective therapist in the work that I do. So my story began I grew up in a small town in Waukegan, Illinois. It's right smack between Chicago and Wisconsin. I am first generation born in the United States. My parents immigrated from Puerto Rico. And I come from a family of 5. I have a sister and 3 brothers. At a very young age, things became quite challenging as by the time that I can remember and have worked on 7 or 8 years old, I had already been sexually abused. And then it occurred in other times of my life. And one was with a family member and another one was the friend of a family. And then there are other people that kind of came in and out. We being first generation, my parents had purchased a home, and everyone that would move from Puerto Rico to get established, find work, learn the language, would live in an apartment that we had upstairs. So it wasn't like people that I was real close to. It was more or less they came and we didn't really know them. And really, my parents were more so just trying to help out the family. It was very common back in the day. Mm-hmm. By the way, how old am I now? 58. I'm going to be 59 pretty soon. So
she's young.
I have quite the story. So I was also raised in a very, very strict, hardcore, religious Pentecostal background. So I wasn't allowed to wear makeup. I wasn't allowed to wear pants. There were a lot of rules. My faith has always been something that grounds me, but at the same time, I had to go through a process of evaluating it. My mother and my dad, my father had his difficulties and his challenges. There were times where when I was growing up, he drank a lot, among other things, but eventually he came to become a born again believer, or came to know the Lord, and there were a lot of changes. However, there was a lot of conflict between my parents. Me growing up with the siblings, I had never told anybody I had been abused. So I think it was first grade, I had what's called selective mutism. I didn't speak for a year
Wow.
at school at all. I found out later when I asked for my records, and my mother had told me, yeah, we had a year, we really struggled. You refused to talk. Studying and knowing what was going now, I was like, wow, I had selective mutism. Okay, I get, why. I really didn't reveal my story of abuse until I was in my early 30s. So I had a really long journey of not understanding what was going on. I would have flashbacks. I was afraid. I would hide in closets. I was also very challenged. My mother at that time had her own struggles, and there was a lot of conflict, a lot of family conflict. And I was that sensitive kid. You know, I everyone was saying, oh my gosh, she's so mature. Oh my gosh. Well, what really was happening is I was what's called parentified. So I was super responsible. I took care of my brothers, my sisters. I learned how to cook really young. I was the kid that your parent would tell you, oh, you should be more like Maria. But
Hmm.
nobody really knew what was going on with me. So I was able to wing it for quite a few years. I had a lot of bouts of depression. I would get this overwhelming sadness for no reason and never really understood what was going on. So by the time I got to high school, I rebelled. I said, enough is enough. I don't want to be Miss Goody Two Shoes. So I started cutting school. I went to I got in trouble. And right before I was supposed to graduate in my senior year, I was missing one class because I never went.
Wow.
I did not graduate, but I went that summer. I got my GED. I wanted to get out of the house. And that summer, applied to a college, and I went away. Literally by January, I was off in college. Nobody understood what happened. There was no graduation for me for high school. And here I am in college, which, by the way, I would be first generation going to college. And it was a culture shock. I was me and another guy were the only Hispanics there. The blacks that were there were on the basketball team, and that was it.
And where was this?
This was in Deerfield,
Deerfield.
Illinois. So I was like, okay, it was a Christian school,
Hmm.
but it was a huge culture shock for me. So I struggled a lot. I had panic attacks. Depressions were getting really bad. So I stopped eating.
Mm.
I got really, really sick, very thin. Nobody knew what was going on. That's the way I was trying to maintain control. And all of a sudden, I got a lot of attention from the boys. My second year, I was going into my third semester. I went to some kind of church event, and I met this guy. He was the youth leader of the church. I think I got married like a year and a half later. I dropped out of school, I got married, and that was the start of a nightmare. And then my trauma came out.
In the
Uh,
relationship.
yes, he was extremely abusive. I had women calling my house. He would gaslight me, which he would do things like, no, that's not true. That's not what happened. And I'd be like, what? Yeah, no. And then I carried the shame of the fact that my marriage wasn't working because in my faith, divorce wasn't an option. And if you got divorced, it was considered an unforgivable sin.
Yeah. A lot of women stay for that reason.
Yes. So I stayed there for 3 years. At the end of the third year, oh my gosh, I gained so much weight. He would leave on Fridays and come back on Mondays. I had no idea where he was. I was working all the time. I don't know what he did with the money, but I was being that submissive, quiet. It's what I was taught. So, no clue as to what was going on. I had no information on relationship. I had no idea except for what I saw in my house, and that wasn't good. So, after the third year, that's when I said, I've had enough. If he can do this, I can do this. And I ended up moving out, going to my brother's, and that's where for a period of about, oh my gosh, 20 years, I was in such a cycle of mood swings, panic attacks. I became promiscuous for a while, not understanding that the sexual abuse was sort of really coming out at that time, the trauma of it. But I didn't understand. I didn't have the words. I didn't know what counseling was. Therapy was something no one talked about. So I was just winging it. So I kind of found other people, other young girls that sort of were also in that state of partying. So I became a workaholic. I would work and work and work. And then on the weekends, I would party really hard so I didn't have to think about anything. I didn't have to worry about anything. And that went on for a while until I met my second husband in a club. He had two children from two different women. And with him, we were together maybe over 10 years. But if my history of trauma was bad, his was worse.
Because he had gone
So
through abuse as
he
well.
had severe abuse. He was from Peru. He had suffered a lot of abuse as a child. And now in retrospect, I can look at that and say, all right, I get this. I understand what was going on. But it was a very toxic relationship and very difficult. But at the same time, there were two little boys, and I became very attached to them. I've always loved children, so I've always been very nurturing. I have a very nurturing spirit. So I sort of became friends with their moms, and I spent as much time as I could with them. And I did that for a while. But I think the backdrop or really the source of all of this is I felt I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my purpose was. I would be so incredibly sad that when I was single, there were weekends where I would go to bed on Friday when I would get out of work. Mind you, I'm excelling at work. I'm an overachiever at work. Everybody saw me at work like, oh my gosh, I would be there at the crack of dawn. I'd be the last one to leave. But I would go to bed on Friday and I'd get up on Monday. Literally did not want to talk to anybody. Sometimes my house would be in disarray. I had no words to be able to say what was going on. After I got married the second time, that was pretty volatile. There were a lot of emotional abuse as far as him dealing with his demons, trying to figure out how to have a healthy relationship. I was so needy. Like I was looking for somebody to validate me or to love me, but very lost. So one day I was suicidal, became very suicidal. And one day there's always been this side of me, though, that doesn't give up. This side of me that there's something different out there. And I truly believe that that comes from the faith part of my life, the part of I always had great respect for God, and that, that Jesus was my savior and it was me that wasn't good enough for him. I just didn't know how to do it, but I knew that that's where the answer was somewhere. So I found this little Baptist church. And I remember I went and I sat in the back. I was such a hot mess. And I thought to myself, all right, Lord, I can't do this anymore. And I don't want to die. Not like this. So I'm going to come to this little church. Hopefully people are going to leave me alone. I'm going to sit in the back and I don't want anybody to talk to me. So I would go every Sunday, even if I had been out all night. That Sunday morning I was there. Poor pastor. He's probably like, who is
You're
this?
gonna show up.
I would show
You're
up with
making it
my
there.
clothes. I was there with my stilettos and, hey, I'm here. And, whether I had gone out, there I was. I had made this commitment where I had told him, I said, I'll be here. I just need to hear from you. You need to talk to me. So one day I'm sitting there and they're like, very conservative church. Like these people were Germans. Some of them had helped the Jews get out of Germany when the Nazis came in. I mean, these people had history. So while I'm sitting there, one day they decide we're going to do a discipleship program. Anybody who's interested, raise your hand. And I'm like, my hand was up. So my hand is up there. What am I doing? Next thing I know, this elderly woman comes up to me. She goes, hi, my name is Erica, and you're my assignment. And I'm like, okay, so what does this mean? She says, you're going to come to my house once a week, and I'm going to disciple you. Okay, listen, I can't explain to you why I was so obedient with this, because God knows I was a hot mess. So I sit down with her at the first meeting and we're talking, and she asked me about my testimony. I'm telling you, I told her the bad and the ugly. I wanted to prove to her, you are wasting your time with me. And she very calmly, she goes, I am so sorry that you've been through all that, but the Lord is going to heal you. I'm like, okay, all right. I just want you to come once a week. She gave me a binder, had Bible verses in it and Bible studies. So here I am with my pack of cigarettes, with my glass of wine,
So real.
doing my Bible study because I got to meet with Erica. So I'm sitting there, and then I would go to her house and I would tell her, excuse me, I need a break. And she's like, what for? I said, I would look at her and say, I got to have a cigarette. She's like, okay. So I'll go outside. I have my cigarette. I'm like, what am I doing? As I continued with her, I had also started counseling. I had started counseling a little before that. My first counselor was a woman. She was a gentle, kind woman. And as a parenthesis, I want to say this. When you're going through counseling or looking for counselors, sometimes you will have different kinds of counselors to help you with different seasons of your life. So the first counselor I met, she was extremely nurturing. I needed that. She was very kind. She was very caring. She explained to me counseling. She did all of that.
Yeah.
I finally got to a point where I'm like, okay, I don't need this anymore. I need something more. So I stopped for a while. And then the second time I went to a man. He was an elderly man. Wonderful. I was with him for a few years. He helped me so much with trauma, but he was very directive, very, okay, Maria, what are you doing? So as I'm doing that, I start this Bible lesson thing. And I began to find out, and she begins to teach me the value of who I am and who Christ says I am. She did it in such a way that it was healing to my soul. So I was like, okay, I have a purpose. In counseling, I was working on my actual trauma, and I could see how the two were coming together. So I would go to counseling. He would give me a perspective on why I behaved a certain way. I would go home. I would work on the spiritual side. And then the following week or two, I would go back to counseling and say, I get it. This is what's happening. Well, he would marvel. He's like, are you kidding me? People have to be in counseling. It takes them years to understand these concepts. I said, no, I get it. I get it. And it was the two working together that the Lord was healing my soul. But at the same time, it wasn't, I'm just going to heal your soul. It was also, you're going to know who you are. As I became stronger, things got crazier at home. And I went through this period where he wanted to leave. He left. I got so upset. I got divorced. And then I married him again. And I know we can talk more about my crazy
Relationships. Ooh.
Yeah, I was poster child for dysfunctional relationships. Although I do want to say I have been in a very wonderful relationship now for the past, 15 years. So I know how it works. But anyway, as I was going through that process, I began to, it was a hard time. I had to go and get medication for about a year because my depressions had gotten so bad. It's almost as if I had to get healthy enough to be able to prepare myself so that I could deal with an enormous amount of pain.
How long was that period of time?
Oh my gosh. I want to say about 5 years. But I had done a lot of damage in all the years before. I had to understand how sexual abuse affects your life. I had to get my no back, how to say no, how to set boundaries, how to respect myself, and also forgive myself for past hurts that I had done to other people and to myself. Healing with the family. So it was a process. One of my brothers, he's bipolar schizophrenic, and growing up with somebody who was also mentally ill at that level in the house, there was no room to talk about how I felt because he sort of took my parents' attention. And I remember, as a little girl, I would sit in the room and I had a little closet with a little play area, and I would take a black marker and I would just sit there for hours. And I always felt like I was falling in a hole. And the harder I tried to get out, the deeper I went. So really the only attention for a while that I would get as I was growing up was from the men. Wasn't the kind of attention that I wanted, but it was attention. So when I would lose a lot of weight, I would get all this attention. When I gained weight, then I was more safe. So there's always been this, it was almost as if my beauty became a weapon. It became a tool that I use to get even with my past.
Yeah.
I could use it to be the seductress. I could use it pretty much to make it work the way I wanted it to work. So I thought. Really, none of that works because at the end of the day, you begin to really lose the essence of who you are. And as much as women want to tell me, well, when you're dressing and when you're using your beauty as a way to sort of in a narcissistic way to get all the attention. There's a way that you do that.
Yeah. Or to even hide
Um,
your pain. Like, you dress up, you do all of this to hide the pain that you feel.
oh yeah, I got it all together. Look at me. I am a superstar. No, you're not.
Hmm.
No, you're not.
You don't feel like that at night, that's for sure. When you're all alone and your thoughts are there, like you don't feel that way.
Well, and your makeup becomes your war paint.
Mm.
Like I'm going out to battle and I gotta put my face on so that I can do what I have to do and have it all together. Oh, I had an attitude. Oh my goodness. But it was all a facade. I mean, you do that for so long, and parts of me felt like I was dying. Like I'm not proud of the person that I am, but I don't know who I want to be. And as time went on, it was both of those things. It was I came to know. Somebody asked me one time, Maria, how did you do it? How did you heal? How did you? And I said, faith. It was God coming into my life and saying, this is who I say you are. You need to believe this. Don't believe what the pain that you endured, that is who you are, because that is not who you are. And learning who God says I am, learning who God is, um, the distortions that I was fed, not just as a girl, but the distortions as in faith. There's a lot of distortions out there. The distortions from my family of origin, the distortions from the men in my life, the distortions of lies that I was told about my beauty, about who I am. All of that became my truth. And it was all a lie. So I had to go back and I had to begin to understand my story, understand that that is not who I am, who I've become. So what do you want to do with it?
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of times, well, I don't know who I am. And lately I've been feeling more like, well, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What kind of woman do you want to be? So now I know I'm very nurturing. When people hear my story, they're like, no way. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, because you can see the transformation. It's
Yes.
crazy when God really does transform and change your life. You don't look the same. You don't act the same, meaning like it's a complete restoration, inside and out.
And it's helped me, believe it or not, it's helped me do the search in my life about who God is. It's helped me in the work that I do. I understand pain, I understand abandonment, I understand abuse, and the imprint that it can leave on someone's life, and the perfectionism and the trying to keep up with other people, never feeling like you're good enough. But I also know the healing.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the gist.
You have a lot of your story, but
Yeah,
do
I can
you
get pretty ugly, but
no, but sharing what you did today, when you have told me parts of your story, I feel like every time I learn a little bit more and I see, wow, like how really God has completely restored. And now because you experienced that pain, you can even connect how you said and understand and really go deeper in with who you speak to because you understand them. You can't talk about something that you've never been through.
Mhm.
So how if someone's hearing this today and you were able to share about faith, like that was very helpful throughout your journey of healing, but what are also some things that you want to give kind of advice to if someone's in that situation of feeling like at their lowest point where they feel like they're putting on this facade, they're putting on this face, like how can someone move forward and get the help that they need?
Well, the first step is you have to acknowledge and be vulnerable enough and humble enough to say, I need help. I cannot do this alone. You can't, if you don't have a healthy context in your life to be able to pull from, you're not going to be able to do it on your own. So I think the first step is that I was at a place where I told myself, I'm going to do whatever I have to do, but I'm not going to be this way for the rest of my life. I refuse to be this way. Like, there has to be a different way. The other thing you need is courage. You need courage to be able to endure. You need courage to be able to face your past, understand it, and make peace with it. Forgive where you need to forgive and move forward. We were not created to be in despair. And the faith that we have, sometimes we're given a faith that we think nothing bad is going to happen to us. That's not true. Being a Christian has nothing to do with we're perfect, because we're not. This is all about broken people. But it is about a faith of forgiveness, of compassion, of enduring, of suffering. It's not a self-centered faith. It's a faith that Jesus is my master. He is over me. I submit to him. He is bigger than me. He is my creator God. That is who I submit to every day. It isn't about me, but he heals me and he gives me hope, and not hope for here, but eternal hope. So when I have those difficult days, as we all do, I just, my mom passed away a year ago, and it's been a journey to see her. I was in hospice with her, but to see her faith, to say, hey, I'm going to see you again. And that gave me such peace. So I would encourage, especially us therapists who are of the faith, I don't really see true and complete healing until you are in that place of faith. But we love on everybody. And we come from a foundation of peace and a foundation that is very much grounded on something that's bigger than us, which is our Creator God.
Yes, amen. Amen. Thank you for sharing your story, Maria. I really hope that those that are listening today really can, whatever your story might look like, maybe it doesn't have to do with every little point that Maria talked about, but just really analyzing your story and making that part of being able to see like how you can still come out of it, and you can still overcome, and you can still shine and be able to, be the light for someone else, that maybe in that moment that you needed someone, you can be that for someone else now. So thank you so much, Maria. Again, thank you so much for joining us. So stay tuned for the next episode of our podcast, where we'll have another special guest to be able to share more. So thank you guys for joining us.